So, in my recent video, I made a video on the Frost Spawner. Well, one of my recent videos I made a video about the Frost Spawner. In fact, I've made a couple now at this point. But there's been an update to the point where there's a description for it. And the person who leaked this to the world, the Frost Spawner, the fact that the Frost Spawner is actually an enemy, it gave me some things that I think are interesting and the stuff that I typically cover. This is Nim, by the way. This person here, the game balancer that I actually originally got this screenshot from, the original screenshot before the description was added for the Frost Spawner. So in that video about the Frost Spawner spawning into the game, I made a couple of predictions. Some of them are wrong because they were predictions. So firstly, you can't actually get this by doing a kill all command. You can't even get this by a developer spawning it in and then them using a kill all command. Nextia has confirmed to me, and I was stupid to actually not read it properly because I thought he only said sandbox mode. No, he also meant that all enemies spawned by a developer or an admin, they cannot drop a logbook. So, for example, if a developer were to spawn in, say, the Jacobot from 2019, and they were to do a kill all command on it, or even if you were to kill it by natural causes, so like, you know, you get a ranger and just shoot it, that would not actually give the logbook. Spawned enemies from the admin panel / admin command or sandbox mode do not give the logbook. And just so we're clear, they don't even contribute to like a 20 logbook thing, and they don't have a probability to drop as well. It is the case where you cannot get those logbooks. So when I said that you could get the imposter logbook, that is not true. You can't actually get the imposter logbook because the only way to spawn it in is through an admin command. There is no way for it to naturally appear anymore. Therefore, you cannot get the imposter logbook. But it does sort of exist. I mean, yeah. So in terms of the siege engine, yeah, getting the logbook, obviously you can't get it. Nim got it by giving it to themselves. You can't get it, at least publicly. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there will be a way in the future to get it, or it could appear in the logbook index as an enemy after the event ends, and once the developers add all the event enemies to the spawning in thing. Otherwise, it is an enemy that you can't get. But it does have a logbook entry, and Nim has given it to themselves. So if you spawn it into sandbox mode, what does it do? Well, it actually functions like a normal enemy. It just, when you spawn it in, it just rolls through. You can't select it on anything because it's like it doesn't have a hitbox, I don't assume. Well, it does have a hitbox because otherwise the Gatling gun would be able to damage it, nor would you be able to see the pumpkin bomb deal bleeding to it. But it's like the balloon boy. You can't select it to actually see what it is. But as you can see, it is quite a fast enemy. It's faster than some of the other stuff that spawns into the game. And it's the same stat as you see in the Frost Invasion event, and it has the same effects as moving during the Frost Invasion event. But as you can see here, once it reaches the end, it actually just disappears. So it acts like a normal enemy. However, it doesn't stop and open up like it does in the Frost Invasion event, because I think there's a node for that, specifically in the Frost Invasion event. Whereas here, obviously in sandbox mode, there isn't a node for it. So on dual lane maps, it does the same thing apparently. So here, you spawn Frost Spirit here, and, sorry, the Siege Engine, or the Frost Spawner, and they basically act the same. So, yeah, they just both spawn on both paths and make a dash towards the end. That being said, though, this is an all paths map. I don't think so, at least. Is a Gilded Path an all paths map? I don't think it is. I'd assume it would duplicate in maps with all paths, like Mason Arch, because it's an enemy. So, as we know from the Siege Engine, or the Frost Spawner, if you spawn in the Frost Spawner, it will kill all units and trigger all the traps. So, yeah. But what happens if you spawn the Frost Spawner into the Outpost 32 map for the Operation Ice event? Well, actually, it depends on what wave you spawn it in. So before wave 33, sorry, it will just head towards the end as seen here. So it will just go, it has a weird node thing, right, where it just heads towards the end through its own path instead of following the path here. So as you can see here, it just goes like that. And it's like after the barrier. So, okay, so after it hits the barrier here, it then just all of a sudden goes for a beeline, ignoring these corners here. Now, I'd assume that's because, I think it's something to do with the nodes not being set up because the barrier isn't destroyed yet. So this is actually the path that occurs because there is no path for the other enemies because you haven't destroyed the other barriers yet. And yes, when it dies, yeah, you can see it doing a puff of smoke. So, I mean, theoretically, there is a way to kill it, make it reach the end. But how do you make it reach the end? And an enemy reaching the end does not mean that it will drop the logbook as well either. Now, the frost spawner, an interesting thing about the frost spawner is that it actually damages enemies. Now, it's kind of weird. So before wave 3, I think, it doesn't actually damage enemies. So as seen here, it just passes through those enemies as if there's nothing. Because, I mean, I think that's the same when we saw that with, I think, the Frost Ravager or the Packed Ice. When the left barrier, sorry, the right barrier, I don't know my lefts and rights, the siege engine will pass through the Packed Ice and not deal any damage to it. But if you were to spawn the Frost Spawner after wave 5, then the Frost Spawner actually deals damage towards the enemies. You can see in the background that these enemies are actually being killed. Now, these enemies are being outrun, yes, but the Frost Spawner actually deals a not so insignificant amount of damage towards the Frost Spirit here. It is tick-based damage, and it's going down like 1 per tick or whatever. But, as you can see, it actually damages enemies. This is the first friendly fire enemy, it appears to be the case. So actually, spawning in the Frost Spawner actually helps you out. This is the first enemy that kind of helps you out by dealing damage towards its own kind. I mean, technically it's its own kind. I mean, the siege engine isn't actually a proper humanoid living thing. It's just an engine of sorts. And yeah, okay. Of course, that being said though, you need the logbook for it to spawn it into a game mode like this. And for some reason, it only applies to Outpost 32. It doesn't damage the other enemies as we saw in the previous videos. But there is no known publicly way of getting it. It might be possible, but like I said, developers haven't said anything. And if there was a reasonable chance of getting it, no one has figured out how to do that yet. But yes, that's the Frost Spawner. It is a very, very interesting enemy that, I mean, until recently, most people wouldn't even consider it an enemy. But now, since there isn't a description for it, it is now considered an enemy. Just an enemy that you can't get. Unless you're hacking, or you're the developer, or you're special for some reason. And let me be totally honest with you. You are not special. You do not have the Frost Spawner logbook. Actually, out of curiosity, how much damage does it do per second? So if we go here and then... okay, so it's 14. So it deals about 2,000-ish DPS. So, okay, so let's see. Let's time this correctly. Okay, so it's right at the end of 12, and then all of a sudden we give it to 13. So you need to do a transition of there. So it is about 1,500 DPS. It's about 1,000 DPS. That is insane. This is the highest dealing damage anywhere in the game, but you can't get it. Yeah, sorry guys.